Naruto, by the end of the story, gains an absurd level of power. So much power that the only real threats had to come from another world. It was the only way to create actual stakes in the story and put our heroes in a position in which they could actually lose. And even when the Otsutsuki are introduced, Naruto still regularly went hand for hand with them and oftentimes ended up defeating them in combat. However, what if things were different? What if instead of the Otsutsuki arriving on Earth, what if someone else arrived instead? Someone from an entirely different world. What if someone was sent from the planet Krypton and decided they wanted to conquer the Earth? Would they be able to stand up to Naruto, or would Naruto be able to plant his feet in the ground and repel this extraterrestrial enemy? Well, that's what we're talking today, because today we're talking Naruto versus Superman is closer than you think. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, getting right into it, first things first. We have to establish this is going to be DCAU Superman, and he is going to be battling adult Naruto. We're going to take everything into account from Superman the Animated Series all the way until the end of Justice League Unlimited. And as for Naruto, we are going to be taking him all the way up until the point that he loses Kurama. Another thing we have to take into account is that these two characters probably wouldn't end up fighting, especially when Superman first arrives. So we have to give them a reason to go all out. And that reason is going to be Superman is going to be bloodlusted. Superman is going to want to actually conquer this planet. And thus that will also give Naruto a reason to go all out. Something he often does against Otsutsuki. So with all that out of the way, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the strength of these two characters. Now, when it comes for actual physical strength, this isn't going to be that close in my opinion, although Naruto is incredibly strong. Even when he just unlocks Sage Mode, he has an insane amount of strength. And once he unlocks KCM 1 and KCM 2, his strength just increases. And then once he is able to form the Kurama avatar, his strength becomes next level. However, all that being said, his strength still, in my opinion, just does not compare with the strength that Superman possesses. And I know this version of Superman isn't as strong as other animated versions of Superman, and he's definitely not as strong as versions of Superman in the comics. However, he still has insane levels of power. He's able to lift up and hold planes with relative ease. He doesn't even break a sweat doing it. When he stops holding back, he's able to punch Darkseid when Darkseid is merged with Brainiac across all of Metropolis through multiple skyscrapers, and then when he punches him down into the ground, he creates a massive crater. These are insane levels of strength that, in my opinion, although I love Naruto, he just doesn't reach the height of Superman's strength. However, that being said, it is not going to come down to just strength. Another thing we have to talk about is when it comes to speed. And although a lot of people may disagree about this, Superman's speed is not even close to the speed that Naruto can achieve. And there are a couple examples of this. So going off of Superman's speed specifically, there is a moment where he races the Flash. And before anyone says that they weren't trying, it was just for charity, they were both trying 100%. They both wanted to win that race. Yes, it was for charity, but they were both absolutely trying their hardest. And that's very evident by the fact that Superman starts to fly during the race. And it's at this point he's actually able to match the speeds of the Flash. However, there is a very, very important thing we have to note. The DCAU version of the Flash is not as fast as other versions of the Flash, at least not at the start. And considering this race happens during Superman the Animated Series, it does stand to reason that over the course of time, the speed feats that we see from the Flash are not any type of thing that Superman can match. Like when the Flash goes God mode to defeat Brainiac merged with Lex Luthor, we see him actually tap into the Speed Force and travel at the speed of light, being able to traverse the entire distance of the planet in mere milliseconds. This is something that Superman has never shown the ability to do. And in addition to that, in Justice League the Animated Series, we do see a battle between Superman and the Flash. Well, it's technically Justice Lord Superman. However, considering the fact that there are no differences between these two versions of the characters aside from a little bit in their personalities, it does stand to reason that because Justice Lord Superman was not able to match the speed of the Flash and he was regularly missing a bunch of punches against the Flash, it makes sense that his speed, especially attack speed, is going to be less than the Flash. And that was also before the Flash was able to run at light speed. And another thing we have to keep in mind, Superman reaching insane speeds is still achievable in this universe. However, there's a very important thing to note. It does not happen instantaneously. Superman does have to build up momentum if he wants to achieve great speeds. Yes, he can travel faster than a speeding bullet right off the bat. However, if he wants to achieve greater speeds than that, especially when it comes to his flight, he does have to build up to that. And that's been shown multiple times throughout the series in the DCAU. However, when it comes to Naruto, he regularly dodges attacks that move at the speed of light. And I'm really only going to talk about two of these instances. One of them is when he's battling Jubidara and he fires that Gale-style attack right at Naruto at point-blank range, and Naruto is able to not only react to it, but he's able to dodge it when they are literally less than 3 feet away from each other. And this was Naruto at only the age of 17 years old. But then it gets even crazier with his speed. By the time Boruto rolls around, Naruto ends up battling someone named Delta, who has the ability to fire beams from her eyes that move at the speed of light. And these beams, they are literally a counter for anyone who has a healing factor. They negate any type of healing. However, over the course of this fight, he is able to not only continue battling her, but he is able to continue dodging her beams throughout the entire battle. There are even moments where she has him at point blank range and he's still able to just very easily dodge these attacks. And there are even instances in just Sage Mode where Naruto is able to dodge attacks that move close to light speed. He was able to dodge the third Raikage when he was cloaked in his full lightning cloak. And because we know that the fourth Raikage is probably about the same speed as the third Raikage, and the fourth Raikage was compared to being almost as fast as the yellow flash of the leaf, who literally possessed an instant teleportation jutsu, it does stand to reason that if Naruto was able to dodge an attack from the third Raikage in just Sage Mode, it does stand to reason that he probably has a light speed reaction speed in just Sage Mode. But when he gets KCM1, we also see he's able to dodge an attack from the fourth Raikage. And over the course of time, his speed just continues to increase. Once he obtains KCM2, once he obtains Sage of Six Paths Chakra, and he inevitably also gets an insane boost once he gets the other half of Kurama. So in my opinion, although a lot of people may disagree with this, Naruto without a doubt possesses greater speeds than DCAU Superman, at least greater speeds that were shown in both of their shows. Now, establishing how this battle would actually play out, both of them do typically like to battle at close range. So this battle is going to become a hand-to-hand combat battle. And although Superman is going to have the advantage when it comes to strength, so did Ishiki Otsutsuki. And I know a lot of you might be saying, well, yeah, but Ishiki absolutely stomped Naruto and Sasuke. And you're right. However, what you may be missing in that fight is that Naruto only became weakened in that battle once Ishiki started using chakra rods, something that countered Naruto being able to access Kurama's chakra and even being able to access his own chakra. However, up until that point, although Ishiki was throwing Naruto around and slamming him through multiple different mountains and dragging him across the ground, Naruto wasn't sustaining any actual damage. He kept getting back up and he wasn't even bleeding from any of that. So it does stand to reason that if Superman were to get a hold of Naruto during this battle and do something similar, Naruto might be able to get out of that situation. However, he is also going to have the durability to take those attacks head on. And if Superman starts to utilize his other abilities, like his heat vision, that's going to do absolutely nothing against Naruto. Keep in mind, this is a version of Naruto that decided to tank an attack from Kawaki at point blank range. And when he took that attack, it absolutely would have done more damage than any heat vision blast from Superman. We've seen the upper limits of Superman's heat vision, and we've also seen the destructive power of those blasts from Kawaki. And considering the fact that after Naruto took that attack head on, it did absolutely no damage to him, it does stand to reason that if he were hit with Superman's heat vision, it would do next to nothing. However, I also have another example to show why Superman's heat vision would be very useless against Naruto. And that's when Naruto takes on Toneri Otsutsuki. And Toneri launches an attack that is able to split the entire move in half with one slice. And that slice actually ends up hitting Naruto first. However, Naruto doesn't take any damage from this. In fact, as soon as this attack is over, all you see is hundreds of Naruto shadow clones and Naruto shows absolutely no damage taken, which is even crazier considering the fact that Naruto had split off not another shadow clone, but he had split off Kurama in an entirely different form to go battle elsewhere. So it does stand to reason that this wasn't even Naruto at his full power, and yet he was still able to tank an attack that was able to split the moon in half. And he did so relatively easily without taking any damage at all. Whereas Superman, on the other hand, has never shown the ability to split the moon or split anything like that with his heat vision. His greatest feat with his heat vision was either being able to burn through Darkseid's foot or being able to lobotomize Doomsday. However, keep in mind, both of these took a lot of time, and in my opinion, I don't think they'd be able to actually work on Naruto, because although they worked on Darkseid and Doomsday, these were also technically weaker versions of Darkseid and Doomsday than we've seen in other iterations. So in my opinion, when it comes to durability, Naruto is definitely going to take the cake, and he's going to have a superior durability over DCAU Superman. And yes, I know Superman has some other abilities like his cold breath, but that's realistically going to do absolutely nothing against Naruto. We've seen him be frozen before, and that's realistically done nothing at all. And considering the fact that we've seen a lot weaker people than Naruto break out of Superman's cold breath after he freezes them, it does stand to reason that if Naruto somehow did get caught in Superman's cold breath, that he would be able to break out of it relatively easily. However, when we're talking about Naruto's attacks, specifically his distance attacks, he actually has a couple of counters for Superman that Superman is actually going to sustain a ton of damage from. And the first one I'm going to talk about, he actually learns pretty early on in Shippuden, and that is his wind-style Rasen Shuriken. And I know what you guys might be thinking. That's crazy. There's no way that does any damage to Superman. However, you would be wrong there, and let me point out why. So the wind-style Rasen Rasen Shuriken is essentially a bunch of microscopic wind-style attacks that do damage on a cellular level. We see this and we are told this by Tsunade after she examines Kakuzu's body. And after Naruto uses the wind-style Rasen Shuriken against Kakuzu, we actually see this being done to Kakuzu. It does such a thorough job on Kakuzu that he isn't even able to move. It destroys his entire chakra network. It destroys 2 out of 3 of his remaining hearts. And before anyone says that Superman is the Man of Steel, there's no way this would do any damage to him, I want to point out that in the Justice League versus the Fatal 5 movie, Superman encounters someone called the Persuader, one of the villains from the future, and he has a battle with him. However, this battle does something that Superman never expects. Superman gets hit with the Persuader's axe that is able to actually cut Superman. And the important thing to note is that this isn't a Kryptonian weapon. This also isn't a weapon laced with kryptonite, and it's also not imbued with any magic, meaning it isn't utilizing any of the weaknesses Superman has, and it's also not even utilizing the vulnerabilities that Superman has been shown to have. And yet it was still able to actually cut Superman. It made him bleed with just one swipe. And the reason that it does this is actually explained by Mr. Terrific. It is sharpened so finite that it is able to do damage on a cellular and molecular level. It was able to actually cut through Superman's cells. So with that in mind, it does stand to reason that microscopic attacks would be able to do something to Superman. Now, am I saying that a wind-style Rasen Shuriken would be able to completely maim Superman? No, absolutely not. But what I am saying is that if Naruto is able to land 1 or 2 of these attacks, it is going to do significant damage against Superman. And if he continuously gets hit by these attacks, it does stand to reason that it does a ton of damage over the course of time against Superman. Because keep in mind, 1 blow from that axe was able to do a ton of damage to Superman. It made him lose that fight. And considering the fact that the wind-style Rasen Shuriken isn't even Naruto's strongest attack, it does stand to reason that some of his other attacks are probably going to do significant damage against Superman, like a Tailed Beast Bomb, Rasen Shuriken. These were enough to destroy asteroids that were bigger than the size of the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. And considering the fact that if Superman was hit by a meteor that was that size, he would sustain extreme damage, because Naruto was able to actually destroy those meteors with relative ease, mind you, it does stand to reason that he'd be able to have an attack output that outweighs any type of durability that DCAU Superman has. And this isn't even taking into account some of Naruto's other insane attacks, like his lava-style Rasen Shuriken that was not only able to almost kill Jubidara, but also at the same time, it was able to split the entire God Tree apart, which is an absolutely absurd feat considering how insanely big the God Tree was. So if Superman is hit with any of these attacks, he's going to sustain a ton of damage. And I haven't even got into how Naruto could utilize a ton of shadow clones in this battle. Although Superman has X-ray vision, he doesn't have the ability to tell the difference between the shadow clones and the real version of Naruto. So Naruto would be able to probably land a bunch of attacks just by hiding within his shadow clones. Meanwhile, Superman would just be attacking the shadow clones and continuously missing the real Naruto. And even if Superman were to get close enough to Naruto to try to land some attacks, it does stand to reason that Naruto would have the upper hand. In a close quarters sense, Superman doesn't have that much speed, and we see this when Justice Sword Superman does try to fight the Flash. He misses almost every single punch. So it does stand to reason that Naruto would probably be able to dodge a lot of Superman's attacks, considering the fact that with just Sage Mode, as I mentioned before, Naruto was able to dodge an attack from the 3rd Raikage. And considering the fact that this would be an adult version of Naruto, who not only has Sage Mode, KCM2, but also Sage of Six Paths Chakra, it does stand to reason that Naruto would be able to dodge every single one of Superman's punches with relative ease. And then he would be able to counter relatively easily as well. And when it comes to an actual combat sense, Superman is nowhere near as combat-oriented as Naruto is. Yes, he is incredibly capable. However, when it comes to actual martial arts and actual fighting style, Superman doesn't even start to compare to Naruto in that way. Naruto, I feel like, just has way too many abilities, especially by the time he is an adult, for Superman to compete with. Now, if this were a different version of Superman, I feel like the fight would be a lot closer, and in a lot of cases, Superman would actually demolish Naruto. However, since it is DCAU Superman, a version of Superman who has been shown to have very clear weaknesses and have very clear limitations throughout every series he is a part of, it does stand to reason that Naruto probably wins this fight 7 out of 10 times. And another important thing to note, I didn't even mention Naruto's trump card. That trump card being Baryon mode. Because in this battle, I honestly don't think Naruto is going to need to even activate Baryon mode to defeat Superman. Now, in those 3 instances where Superman is actually going to take victory, would Naruto activate Baryon mode? Yes, I do believe he would inevitably activate Baryon mode. And in my opinion, if he activated Baryon mode, the fight would end relatively quickly. However, that would be a topic for another video, but I'm interested to hear from all of you. How do you think this battle would go? Do you agree that Naruto just has too many abilities and has too high of a durability for Superman to overcome? Or do you think I'm completely wrong and underestimating DCAU Superman? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.